During our last video, I left you kind of hanging here at the layout view, and I said, here's some options, North Arrow, Scale, Legend. Go ahead and drop something in, create a professional layout, and then export it as a PDF. I want to step back and just make sure that we cover some of the finer points here. The North Arrow is relatively straightforward, but there's some other things that I didn't cover. One of those is, how do we just add text? Now, admittedly, I do most of this in general in I go ahead and set this, export this out into Adobe, which I'm going to show you in a later lesson, and actually do most of that layout work in graphics software. However, it's good to know here, just so that you can actually go ahead and create this. I can drop text in. There's lots of different options here. It looks like PowerPoint. It acts like PowerPoint in terms of the insert menu here. The thing that's a little more complex in PowerPoint is you see I select my text and nothing really pops up, that's useful or beneficial. Even when I click through my options, nothing really makes sense. Well, you got to go ahead and click over to text symbol. And once you're at text symbol, you can go ahead and, change the text size. And yeah, that's going to go ahead and change that up. And I can go ahead and bring this down here and type in Central Park. And, if I want to go ahead and center that, I can. I think I have to select the text first. Anyway, you can start to see why often I go ahead and just do this in other software. If you play around with the options, here you have access to both paragraph options and here underneath position, I can go ahead and click on the button. Again, you've got to, it's going to go ahead and drop it elsewhere. Those are just some of the aspects of it. GIS is a mapping software first and foremost. Just recognize that and give them a little bit of a break when it comes to some of the graphic layout work. The other thing on the legend that I didn't show you last time that I want to make sure we don't forget is that I go ahead and drop in a legend. And again, whenever you're working with a new set of tools in ArcGIS, it's always good to go ahead and scroll through all your different options. Maybe you want to increase the font size so that it's more readable. All of that is in here. You just have to go to text symbol and again change up to the text size that you'd want. You have to be selecting, yeah, it's going to go ahead and redo that for me and drop all of that stuff in there. But you'll also see here that I've got a lot of symbols that maybe I don't want or need. In order to change that, you come here to the first options menu, you click show properties, and what it's going to do is it's actually going to go ahead and allow me to drop everything else out except for the tree selection layer with the DBH sizes. Right, that's the only thing I want on my menu. It's on my legend. It's a really easy way to go ahead and get that information dropped in there, and away we go. Last thing, scale bar. I showed you last time that I do use this kind of single division scale bar frequently. The reason is at some point in time we're going to want to print this off and have this out, so that we can slap an engineering scale onto it. There's several things that I want to show you related to the engineering scale that will help out in getting this down. Now, one of those is that zoom in on it, and you're going to want to kind of bring this up here. I'm going to bring it over to the 1 and just check. I want 1 inch, right? And so certainly one way I could do that is I could try and kind of drag all this down to 1 inch, right? Well, you see what happens is my label comes down and becomes part of that. And so one of the things I can do, first I should change it over to feet. Second, I can tell it I want it to drop the label below center, and you can see that the box will kind of pop in here. Now, why is it that even if I drag, why won't it actually expand in size and grow out to the 1 inch mark? And the reason is that right now this is set up so that it's actually reading to the actual scale of what's going on here. This graphic scale is 1,000 feet. Now, you can certainly drag this way out and get a bigger scale, but what ArcGIS is really asking you to do here when you're developing your scale is that it's asking you what scale do you want to display the information at. That's probably the most important thing that's going on here. And you know how I showed you before that, the only way to really zoom in and around, let me go ahead and drop back to my layout view so you can see all of this. The only way to zoom in and around is to come in and activate and go through this process of zooming in and out, on whatever it is we're working on. I'm actually going to show you a different way to do it is we can actually come in and set our scale. And so, I could come in and set this up and say that I actually want to drop down to 1 to 1,000, right? you're going to see that basically at 1 to 1,000, I'm getting close to 100 scale. And so, I mean, to see anything, what I would have to do then would be to go ahead and reactivate my map layer underneath the layout view, and pan around to the part of the drawing that I want, and then adjust my symbology, because again, these symbols were set up for a much smaller scale, and so you'd have to go ahead and set this up. In this case, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have it at that scale, and so I'm actually going to go ahead and, oops, I didn't mean to go back to all of Manhattan. Let's jump back to Central Park real quick. Zoom in here. We'll see, it goes ahead and sets that up. I'm going to go ahead and jump out. Again, I just want a known scale that I can work to. 1,000 would be great if that 1,000 were actually 1 inch in size. But again, I can go ahead and kind of bring this up to the 1, and I can show you that it's not even quite 3/4 of an inch to 1,000 feet. I mean, there's several things that we can do in that situation. But one of them is we can actually come over. This will help out a little bit. No, I don't need to preserve my aspect ratio. Oops, I still want the size though. I'm going to tell it that I just want this to be 1 inch in size, and what's actually going to do is set up this over here, and then from there, realistically, you know, the easiest way to do this is to come over here and just start to make some adjustments. So maybe we try 13,500 and see kind of as it zooms in. Well, now we know that that is actually accurate. Now, there's a problem with that, which is that doesn't really get me what I'm looking for. And so let's just try 14,000 and see, kind of work my way backwards. Let's try 15,000. You can make adjustments that will eventually get you down to the point where you have it set up to a specific scale that is 1 inch in size. It takes some time to play around with it, and it is one of the funkier aspects of working with ArcGIS Pro, largely because I don't think that there's a lot of focus on users who print this off and use hand drawing over the top or use a scale, right? In their minds, the reality of it is that we can jump over into our map view at any point in time we want, grab the measure tool, and there, it's just, you know, it gives us the scale that we want. For us, it's a little bit different. We've got to kind of work our way to it. The other way to do that is to actually go ahead and use the zoom in that environment. Either way works. Anyway, I want to go ahead and stop this video here because this gives you a good, you know, overview of some of the things that we didn't address in the layout view in our last session, and we'll go ahead and jump into how we get this out to from ArcGIS to Adobe next.